So now I want to talk a little bit about this wonderful little collection of holiday stories by Truman Capote. To begin with the first one, A Christmas Memory, this was written in published anyway, in 1956 in Mademoiselle magazine. It's the story that introduces us to the young Truman Capote. I think he was about 7 when this story takes place. So it's right around the same time when he appears in To Kill a Mockingbird as Dill. The beginning of the story has such lovely exposition that I thought I would just begin by reading the first 2 pages, or page and a half maybe, and introduce you to the time and the place, and also these 2 characters. Imagine a morning in late November, a coming of winter morning more than 20 years ago. Consider the kitchen of a spreading old house in a country town. That town, of course, is, or was in real life, Monroeville, Alabama. A great black stove is its main feature, but there is also a big round table and a fireplace with 2 rocking chairs placed in front of it. Just today, the fireplace commenced its seasonal roar. A woman with shorn white hair is standing at the kitchen window. She is wearing tennis shoes and a shapeless gray sweater over her summery calico dress. She is small and sprightly, like a bantam hen, but due to a long youthful illness, her shoulders are pitifully hunched. Her face is remarkable, not unlike Lincoln's, craggy like that, and tinted by sun and wind. But it is delicate, too, finely boned, and her eyes are sherry-colored and timid. "Oh my," she exclaims, her breath smoking the window pane. "It's fruitcake weather." The person to whom she is speaking is myself. I am 7. She is 60-something. We are cousins, very distant ones, and we have lived together, well, as long as I can remember. Other people inhabit the house, relatives, and though they have power over us and frequently make us cry, we are not on the whole too much aware of them. We are each other's best friend. So although this is, of course, from his individual perspective, through the whole story, it's all about we. He, that is, and this elderly aunt. He never names her in this story. And that, too, sort of, I think, strengthens our sense of this really strong bond, this connection between these 2 individuals. They feel more like a unit. There's this cuckoo clock. I'll wait till it's done. So the plot is really simple, and the story isn't really about plot so much. It's more about mood and, again, this relationship between these 2 characters. But I can tell you it focuses on their fruitcake making. Every year, the 2 of them, for as long as the boy can remember, they've celebrated the beginning of the Christmas season by making fruitcakes for about 30 people. So those people include, for example, the Roosevelts, who are, of course, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt, sitting in the White House at that time when this story takes place. When a note comes back each year, sort of an official thank you from the White House, they put it in a scrapbook, and they like to think about Franklin and Eleanor eating their fruitcake every Christmas. So the next story I want to talk about is called The Thanksgiving Visitor, and that one was published in 1968 in McCall's magazine. This one, as well as the other one that I'll tell you about in a moment, I would say both of these stories complicate the story that we learned in A Christmas Memory. A Christmas Memory is very impressionistic. We see just sort of only vague outlines of the characters and so forth, the setting. And in the other 2 stories, it's as if that picture kind of resolves and becomes more precise. And that's both a good and a bad thing. To me, it's interesting because I'm interested in this history and Truman Capote's own life and so forth. Artistically, I think it's a little bit less, makes for a little bit less satisfying reading experience. In A Christmas Memory, we have this very this deep connection between the 2 characters. the elderly cousin and the boy. He talks about how he sort of feels her life in some secret vein within himself. In these next two stories, that close connected relationship is disrupted. That's most palpable in The Thanksgiving Visitor, in which they're actually in conflict with each other. This boy has been bullied by a larger kid in the area. I was pulled in. It was like I wanted to know what happened next. How do you resolve this problem of a child being bullied by a much larger kid in a remote community like this in the early 30s? And it may be really more a function of the reality behind the situation, the difficulty of dealing with bullying that leads me somehow to be less satisfied with the way that conflict is resolved. I'm completely with the little boy. I feel his anger and his frustration, and I respect him because he has a real sense of himself as a person. As young as he is, he doesn't want to stop being himself, and I love that about that story. The final story that I want to talk about, and the final one published, is called One Christmas, and that wasn't published until many years later, 1982. It was published in Ladies' Home Journal, and this was just a couple of years before Truman Capote died. In this story, he goes to visit his father in New Orleans, and I think this is the first time, at least in his young awareness, that he has really interacted with his father. And the little boy is distraught at leaving his home life with his cousin Sook. He wants to stay there. That's how he feels Christmas should be, with the fruitcakes and this bond that they have. But instead, he's kind of torn away, and because his father wants to see him and wants him to spend Christmas with him in New Orleans. And in this story, we see a very different side of this little boy. In A Christmas Memory, the material aspect of Christmas doesn't seem to matter very much. Yes, he would like certain things. He doesn't get them, but isn't really all that deeply disappointed. And he and his cousin end up having a wonderful Christmas together, even though they don't really get the stuff they want. In One Christmas, we see him now with his father, and he sees his father. He's like, his father is somebody for him to use, and it's really actually quite natural and believable. He doesn't know this man. The man is a stranger who has suddenly, at Christmas time, decided he wants to see his little boy, and actually forces him away from the place where he feels most comfortable to spend Christmas with him. So the little boy seems to be very cynical in turn about this father. And through the whole of the story, what the little boy wants, he falls in love with a toy airplane that you can actually sit in. So it's kind of like those little cars that kids sit in, and they can pedal them around. And he ends up persuading his father through a guilt trip or something to buy it for him. This story is also really, I guess, casts a different kind of light both on the character and on Christmas and the meaning of the holiday. And I suppose you could say how it has a tendency to sort of degenerate if we get too wrapped up in the physical or the material aspects of it. So that was my introduction to Truman Capote and also to this collection. I think it would make a really rich reading experience, again, for kids, I would say middle school and high school level. It's not certainly a young adult. This is not young adult fiction, but it's relatable. Even though it took place long ago, it's like these issues about bullying and the estrangement of families and the creation of new families out of people who may not even be related to you. I think these are all things that kids now can very much relate to. In the description box below, I'm going to give you the links to 2 movies based on 2 of the stories that I just talked about, A Christmas Memory and The Thanksgiving Visitor. And then also, although I have not read it yet, I'm going to share the link to a book on my to-be-read list, which is actually a cookbook about fruitcakes. And although I don't like fruitcakes, I'm interested in this book because it was written by not that elderly cousin that is the focus of Truman Capote's stories, but by one of the other relatives in that house, who's, at least in A Christmas Memory, kind of like almost an antagonist. And this fruitcake book contains, I think, not only fruitcake recipes, including Sook's recipe from these stories, but I think also maybe some other fruitcake recipes, and more importantly, at least to me, it also apparently contains her memories, the memories of this relative, Marie Rudisill. It contains her memories of this same time period. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up, and even more, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. As I film this, I have, I think, only 4 or 5 subscribers, so I truly am a newbie. In fact, I'm really, at this point, more of a BookTube wannabe, and I would love to have some subscribers. So that's it for today. Happy holidays to everyone, and I'll see you in the new year.